hospital, rather than focusing on the condition of her children. She was intent on getting in touch with her boyfriend. When the staff told her that Danny was paralysed, she expressed surprise that the bullet had struck Danny's spine instead of his heart. She also said things that made her seem completely detached from reality, like, "Boy, this has really spoiled my vacation," and "That really ruined my new car. I've got blood all over the back of it." So 4 days after her children were shot, police brought Diane in to have her reenact what happened that night. With cameras rolling, Diane's first primed her hair and makeup in the car's rearview mirror before launching into her act. Smiling and laughing, she hammed it up for the camera. At one point, she bumped her cast and between laughs said it almost hurt more than what happened. Meanwhile, investigators digging into Diane's background revealed some troubling patterns. She was born Elizabeth Diane Frederickson on the 7th of August 1955 in Phoenix, Arizona. As a teenager, she rebelled against her parents' conservative Baptist upbringing and began going by her middle name of Diane. At 14, against her parents' wishes, she got into a relationship with 16-year-old Diane Downs, who lived across the street. After high school, Stephen joined the Navy, and Diane attended Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College. After only 1 year, she was expelled for being promiscuous and went back to live with her parents. Nonetheless, the two continued their long-distance relationship until November 1973, when Stephen came home from the Navy. Diane ran away from home, and the two were married. The marriage was rocky from the start. They fought about money and Stephen's suspicions that Diane was cheating on him. Diane often left Stephen and went back to her parents, but they would always reconcile. In 1974, despite the problems in their marriage, they had their first child, Christy. Diane stated that she didn't consult Stephen about getting pregnant, she just did it. A year later, she gave birth to their second child, Cheryl. According to Stephen, she was the only woman I know who gets pregnant to cheer herself up. But as much as she enjoyed being pregnant, she didn't seem to enjoy actually raising children. She treated the kids like crap, he said. At this point, Stephen decided he didn't want any more children, and probably feeling he couldn't trust Diane to continue using birth control, he had a vasectomy. Diane got pregnant again anyway, but terminated it. In 1978, they moved to Mesa, Arizona. There, Diane engaged in multiple affairs with her co-workers and became pregnant yet again. she was psychotic. She found this extremely funny and would often brag to friends about it. In 1981, she finally got a full-time job as a postal carrier in Arizona. While she was at work, she would usually send the children to stay with various family members, but the neighbours voiced their concerns about the kids' well-being when they were with their mother. They said the children were often hungry and would beg for food. In cold weather, they wouldn't have coats or appropriate shoes. They said if Diane couldn't find a sitter, she would leave 6-year-old Christy alone in charge of the children. One neighbour said that Cheryl had told her that she was afraid of her mother. Despite this, later that year, she was finally accepted into a surrogate program where she earned $10,000 for carrying a child and surrendering it to adoptive parents. It was also during this time that Diane met and fell in love with her co-worker, Robert, otherwise known as Nick a blogger. About a month after the shooting, Diane started granting interviews with the media. Impeccably dressed and made up, and at one point even sporting a new haircut, she recounted the events of that dark May night. She kept repeating what a terrible ordeal she had been through and how hard it had been on her. She talked a lot, and the words she spoke most frequently were I and me. She smiled and laughed, but never once did she express concern or sadness about her children. Never once did she shed a tear. Most bizarrely, when one reporter asked if she considered herself lucky for only having gotten a minor wound, she shot back that it was her children, one of whom was dead, the other two suffering horrible injuries, who were the lucky ones, because she had not been able to tie her shoes for 2 months. Meanwhile, police were also looking closer into her story. They found 22 caliber casings at the crime scene, but no weapon. While Downs had denied owning a gun, both Stephen Downs and Nick Blocker said she owned a .22 Ruger pistol. Police confirmed this with records proving she had purchased a .22 Ruger in Arizona. Upon searching her house, police found 22 caliber bullets that matched those found at the crime scene, but did not find a weapon. In addition, neither blood splatter patterns nor gunpowder residue matched with the story Diane had told. Further shredding Diane's version of events, a witness came forward to testify that he had passed Diane's car on the road that night because she had been driving extremely slowly. During their search of her home, police also uncovered another important piece of the puzzle. In Diane's diaries, she had written extensively about her obsession with Knickerblock. Diane had pressured him to leave his wife for her, but he had refused and ended the relationship. He later reported that Diane had stalked him and threatened to kill his wife so she could have him to herself. Even after she moved back to Oregon, she wouldn't accept that the relationship was over. She continued to write to him every day, and in April 1983 arranged to visit him. It was then that he unequivocally broke it off with her, telling her he had no interest in being a daddy to her children. Now, replace children, but you can replace the effect they give you, and children are so easy to conceive. During the trial, the prosecution laid out their evidence, but it was Diane's own words and actions that showed her utter remorselessness. At one point, Hungry Like the Wolf was playing in the courtroom, the very song Diane said had been playing when her children were shot. Diane's reaction was to start tapping her toes and bobbing her head to the music. But the most powerful evidence the prosecution had was the testimony of their star witness, Christy Downs. It had taken months of physical and mental therapy for her to be able to take the stand and give her testimony, which centered on a single question: who shot her? Her response was simple but devastating: my mum. In June, Diane was found guilty of all 3 counts and sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years in the Oregon Women's Correctional Center. Between the verdict and sentencing, Diane gave birth to a girl she named Amy Elizabeth. The baby was taken by the state and delivered to adoptive parents. Her story is interesting in its own right. While Diane was in prison, psychiatrists diagnosed her with narcissistic, histrionic and antisocial personality disorders. Her parental rights to Christy and Danny were terminated, and they were adopted by Lane County Deputy District Attorney Fred Hughey, who had prosecuted Diane. But the story of Diane Downs did not end there. On July 11th, 1987, just 3 years into her sentence, Diane scaled the 15-foot-high chain-link fence while the guards weren't looking. She used clothing to protect herself from the barbed wire on top, then dropped to the ground on the other side. A motion sensor on the fence triggered an alarm, but by the time guards arrived, Diane had disappeared. She made her way to a house only 4 blocks from the prison, where Wayne Schieffer, a psychiatric aide, and the estranged husband of one of Diane's fellow inmates lived. When she knocked on the door, she asked, "Could I stay?" Schieffer, hungover, said, "Why not?" and went back upstairs to sleep. Schieffer said that Diane introduced herself a couple of hours later, not as Diane Downs, but as just a girl with no clothes on. They began having a sexual relationship while Diane hid out in his bedroom, only leaving to go to the toilet or take a shower. "I spent 10 days with her," Schieffer told reporters, "and I fell in love." Meanwhile, police were engaged in a search that spread across 14 states and fielded hundreds of tips and sightings from as far east as Wisconsin. But it was Diane's cell where police found the crucial evidence. While looking through her belongings, they found a clipboard with stationery on it. Under oblique lighting, police could see the imprints of what had been written on the previous page. It was a map showing the prison, State Street, and Schieffer's address with the words, "You are here," written at the top. 10 days after her escape, police raided his home and found Diane in his upstairs bedroom, wearing his t-shirt and boxer shorts. He said Diane was going to grab a BB gun and just go suicide by a cop, but he talked her out of it, and Diane surrendered peacefully. Schieffer pleaded guilty to hindering prosecution for harbouring Diane and was sentenced to 5 years she continues to proclaim her innocence. Thank you so much for listening today. Please don't forget